what Gaddafi has done, he dismantled or destroyed the system in the country.
As chaos and violence sweep across Libya,
they're living through fear, they're living through a nightmare.
They're using ammunition, live ammunition.
Al Jazeera hears from those who have lived in fear of Gaddafi's regime.
We don't want him to leave. We want to arrest him. 42 years is too much.
Libya, a state of terror. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back. Just before the break, we told you about food prices hitting record highs. Let's talk some more about it with Neil Watkins, who's the Policy and Campaigns Director for ActionAid USA. Thanks a lot for joining us, Mr. Watkins. To what extent has the unrest in the Middle East and North Africa, and particularly now with Libya, contributed to these record food prices?
Well, you saw, in fact, that some of the issues that contributed to the unrest in places like Egypt and Tunisia, the spark, in a way, have been rising food prices already in those countries. And now what you're seeing is that with the Libya crisis in particular, the price of oil is going up. And of course, we have so much oil in our food, and it takes so much oil to transport our food, that rising price of oil is going to make those global food prices keep going up even higher than they already are. Yeah,
it's a fascinating sort of chicken and egg, because, as you say, it was one of the factors that actually drove the discontent and triggered people to try to topple their governments, and now it seems to be exacerbated. Now, what about the other factors, the factors like drought and the factors like those financial speculators? How would you quantify their influence on driving food prices up?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly important factors. We know, for example, the last time there was a major global food crisis, the UN, the head of the U.S. Financial Trade Commission indicated that commodity speculation in agricultural commodities, the deregulation of commodities, actually helped push up food prices back then, and we continue to see that trend. It's literally more and more investors on Wall Street pumping money into commodities, and this is having the effect of basically having these investors gambling on hunger. So it's certainly a factor, along with some of the other factors you mentioned, like drought and increasing weather problems, some of which is driven by climate change. So it's a complex picture, but we have to tackle some of these underlying causes like commodity speculation, climate change, et cetera, if we're going to be able to end this sort of volatility in global food prices.
Is climate change the biggest factor then?
It's certainly one among many, but most importantly, it's a growing factor. And in fact, as climate change worsens and we're not taking action fast enough to deal with it, you're going to see more droughts, you're going to see more flooding, which is going to in turn increase the impact on the ability of farmers to produce and meet the need that people have to be fed. That's going to put more pressure on prices. So that's a relatively modest factor now, but it's going to be growing over time until we stop it.
All right, Neil Watkins, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you and hearing your thoughts. But it is time for the sport now with Stuart Silvers.
Yes, thanks. And the Cricket World Cup seems to be really hitting its stride now. Following on from Ireland's amazing win over England, we've had another classic match featuring one of the World Cup minnows. Ray Cooker watched Canada's brave effort at taking down Pakistan.
Surely lightning couldn't strike twice, but just 24 hours after Ireland's shock victory over England, Canada's bowlers were also proving a point for the Associate Nations. This time it was Pakistan feeling the heat, as Canada, the lowest ranked side in the tournament, who had lost their 2 previous matches by a combined total of 385 runs, suddenly decided to up their game in some style, bowling out Pakistan for just 184. Canada's batsmen looked like pulling off a dramatic win when Jimmy Hansra brought up 100 with a 6. They needed just 81 runs off 106 balls, with 7 wickets in hand. But a captain's performance from Shahid Afridi, who took 5 wickets, ended the fairy tale, and Canada were eventually bowled out for 138. 46 runs short, a final score that, as Pakistan's relief showed, didn't really tell the whole story. The day's other game was far more one-sided. South Africa's AB de Villiers hit his second successive century as his team crushed the Netherlands by 231 runs. Ray Cooker, Al Jazeera.
Now, Ireland's win over England has blown Group B at the World Cup wide open. Next up, it's Bangladesh against the West Indies in the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka. The home side have already lost to India but did beat Ireland, a result that suddenly looks a lot more impressive. Now it's the West Indies in a meeting between the 8th and 9th ranked sides in the world, clearly vital in the battle to reach the quarter-finals.
Yes, we have to play good cricket, and if we win, that will be a very good result for us. It will take us another step forward to the quarter-final, so we're looking forward to our next game.
Some shock news from the English Premier League. Manchester City defender Kolo Touré has failed a drugs test. A statement on the Manchester City website says the Ivory Coast international has been suspended after testing positive for a specified substance. Touré, who joined from Arsenal for £14 million 2 years ago, could face anything up to a 2-year ban if found guilty. The postponed Bahrain Grand Prix, which was originally scheduled as the first race of the new Formula One season a week on Sunday, is now likely to take place in November. That's according to Formula One's boss, Bernie Ecclestone. The race was called off by the Crown Prince of Bahrain 2 weeks ago, thanks to the ongoing civil unrest in his country. Ecclestone has ruled out staging the race in the mid-season break in August and is considering moving the final race of the season in Brazil back a week to accommodate a rearranged Bahrain Grand Prix. The decision will be announced next Tuesday. Now, the deadline is looming in the United States in the NFL pay dispute. The row between the owners and players now faces the threat of a lockout, where the clubs prevent the players from playing for next season. Talks have broken down over the split in the league's revenue, with the owners wanting to increase their 40% share of the league's $9 billion income. The current deal expires at midnight Eastern Standard Time, that's 5 a.m. GMT, with no sign yet of a resolution. To basketball now, where away matches are usually called road games. But this week the NBA is taking a rather longer trip all the way across the Atlantic. Ashley House took the relatively short trip to East London's O2 Arena to find out more.
On Friday and Saturday nights here at the O2 Arena in London, basketball history will be made when 2 regular season NBA games will take place in Europe for the very first time. The New Jersey Nets and the Toronto Raptors are both struggling towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference with no real hopes of playoff places. But they've made the journey across the Atlantic as part of the NBA's drive to become a truly international league.
The Nets have played in England before, beating the Miami Heat at the O2 in the 2008 pre-season. That was one of 4 sold-out NBA Europe live games in London over the past few seasons, the start of NBA Commissioner David Stern's dream of a European league within 10 years. The push to Europe has been controversial, but Toronto head coach Jay Triano is a fan of the idea.
There's 82 games throughout the season, and I don't think anybody's going to remember at the end of the year Game 65. But they're going to remember the trip to London, England, and they're going to remember the hospitality